For those of you who have been discarded by the narcissist, you very much remember how that friendship, relationship, or partnership ended. You remember how brutal it was. You remember seeing evil in front of your face, and in your mind, you thought that was the end of it. Somewhere down the road, a couple of months, maybe a couple of years later, you received the first text message from your ex-narcissistic partner. And eventually, all of a sudden, they have forgotten the harm and the pain they inflicted on you, and all of a sudden, they want to get back with you. And then you're thinking in your mind, where is this whole thing coming from? I want to make something very clear in this video, people. The narcissist is not wired in that way, that they can forget about you for good. So it does not matter how far you've left them, how far away you've gone from them. It does not matter how long you've been away from them. They are going to come back and try or even attempt a hoover. And most of the victims of narcissistic abuse, they never see the hoover coming. Something what you need to understand, people, is that the narcissist is not wired in that way, that they are able to forget and even sometimes completely forget about their victims. For the most of you who have met those narcissists, you've remembered the situation whereby in the beginning of those partnerships, you've seen them with a very long list of ex-partners in their phones. The reason why the narcissist is keeping most of those, the long lists of names of the people they have dated before in their phones, or even sometime in their records, that means that is a clear indication that at some point in time, those people they have left behind, they're going to come in handy. And most of the cases, many of them, they've been hoovered. The hoover usually comes in if the narcissist cannot get a potential source of supply, or even sometimes there has been a discard has happened and they cannot find a very quick replacement. So they can go back to their phone books or to their records and try to hoover somebody they have known before. And that is the first thing they do. Most of the times, the hoovers, for the people who are not yet awakened, they never see these hoovers coming. So most of the cases, the victims of narcissistic abuse, they are actually taken up by surprise. In this video, we are going to look at the ways that the narcissist is going to actually attempt to hoover you back into a relationship with them. We are going to look at a couple of ways, the methods they use for them to hoover you back into those partnerships. Let's do this. So good morning, good evening, and a good afternoon to viewers from all walks of life. This is Denzomos, and I welcome you to the channel of truth, enlightenment, freedom, and the channel of breaking empaths free. So for those who are just logging in and it's your first time finding my page, I invite you and I welcome you to like my page, share and subscribe. And for those who have always been with me, welcome back. And I thank you for your continued love and support. So, hoover strategy number one, the love bomb. It should not be of surprise to you that the narcissists all of a sudden, when they're trying to hoover back their victims, they are love bombing them all over again. Remember, you have been love bombed before. You have been love bombed before. Initially, for them to get in touch with you, or even sometimes to get you into a relationship with them, they had to love bomb their way to your heart. And that is exactly what they are going to do when they're hovering you. So all of a sudden, you're going to find them sneaking back into your lives and taking you on expensive trips, taking you on expensive vacations, taking you on cruises, taking you actually doing for you all these big shopping, sometimes groceries, sometimes even buying you expensive gifts, toys, and even sometimes clothes. The narcissist will use the love bomb to hoover you back into the relationship. Number two, the narcissist will use children. The children, they're the very big asset of the narcissist, especially if you have left the children behind with the ex-narcissist. It is very likely they are going to use those children to get back into a relationship with you. So what do they do by this? What they do, they're going to create a scenario The narcissists are very crafty people. So what they'll do, they'll create a scenario, they'll create an emergency. They'll call you in the middle of the night, and they'll call you in very awkward hours, and they'll try to form or even sometimes to craft out an emergency. They will tell you there's an emergency at home, there's something with the kid. Even sometimes they're the ones who have caused that kind of emergency. They will cause the emergency on purpose because they want to get you back into that partnership. So they want to get you running to the house in awkward hours. Most of the cases, if it's about the kids, they will know you're very much attached to your kids. So they will use those kids to create an emergency. Which emergency, as soon as they send you the text message, even sometimes they have called you, you are going to take the first ride home to see what is going on with that house, in the house, always at time with those children. As soon as you get into the house, people, that is when the Hoover is going to start. There could be a real emergency in some cases. There could be a real emergency, or even sometimes it could be just a fake one. You may reach the house and actually there's nothing going on at home. There was no actual emergency happening. The narcissist just wanted to get you into that house at awkward hours. Number 3, the narcissist has made you a codependent. I mentioned that previously in my video. Usually when you're with a narcissist, what they will do, they are going to do their best to make sure that they are doing all these small, simple things in the house. They are cleaning, they're pruning the gardens, they wash the plates, they wash the dishes, they're washing your clothes. They are doing each and everything. Now, there's nothing wrong with doing this kind of things if you're living with somebody who is a healthy individual. But the problem is that when you're living with this kind of individual, the narcissists, they are doing this specifically on purpose because they are going to use something. They are going to use these same things to get you trapped into a codependent relationship. And most of the cases, that's why you see the individuals who are left those narcissists, they cannot survive on their own out of those partnerships. And they have usually reminisced, and they have usually missed those things that the narcissist used to do for them when they were together. So most of the people have been hoovered back into narcissistic relationships. You've had them complaining. Sometimes you've had them regretting, even sometimes thinking that they are missing those things that those guys did for them. Most of the cases, the narcissists have made you codependent, and it is very difficult for you to stand on your own 2 feet, to do things by yourself, because when you are with them, they have already slowly but surely crafted you and made you a codependent. And that is how some people, even sometimes, they are hoovered back into narcissistic relationships. Lastly, the narcissist is going to try to hoover you through surprise visits. Now, all of a sudden, you're at work, you come out on your break, and you see the narcissist standing outside the door. That is especially if they know where you're living, if they know where you're working, if they know your workplace, they are going to show up uninvited, abruptly. It is not a coincidence, people. They have done it on purpose because they know where you work, so eventually they know where to find you. If you ever see a narcissist appear in front of you, all of a sudden, abruptly, it is not a coincidence. They have already programmed this. They have already programmed these moves. You're in your workplace, and all of a sudden they are calling you on the break, and somebody's waiting for you outside the door. You find your ex-narcissist standing on the door. That is a hoover coming, people. They are very good at programming and actually pretending that they are surprising their victims at their workplace. Sometimes you can even see them driving past your house. In front of your house, you see their vehicles parked in front of your house for no apparent reason. All these are not coincidences, people. The narcissists, they are programming to hoover you back. Whenever you see them showing up at your workplace, job place, or even sometimes showing up in front of your house, they are preparing for the hoover. When you ever see some of these things I've mentioned, people, the narcissist is preparing to hoover you. You should be alert and keep your guard up, and do not let to be taken and accept to be taken by surprise. Other than that, people, if you've been hoovered, let me know which other way you've been hoovered before. Let me know, and let's share together. Other than that, people, I'll get back in touch with you. Much love and blessings. Desmos signing out.